if the stream's running.
I'm gonna exit the Discord chat for the sake of
Sake of what?
testing out the stream. That's the purpose of this.
Mm-hmm. Hey everyone who is watching right now, which is going to be no one because I just started the stream, but hello to everyone who is joining us from the future.
And he is using my computer.
Yes, I'm over at a friend's house right now because
Yes.
my internet sucks the poops.
Right.
Uh,
I'd say it goes like 20, 30 seconds of delay.
yeah, that's delay's fine. It doesn't really matter. I have a
Audio's good, by the way.
okay.
I'll check audio what's going on.
So, the general purpose of why I'm going to be streaming is to help some of my fellow UH students that want to learn GameMaker and want to eventually maybe join our programming team for Project Amaranth. And so, this is kind of geared towards those individuals, and so I have them in a separate Discord chat where they can talk to me directly, and I'm actually streaming my desktop so that there's no delay from YouTube. Say hi, Sibi.
What's up, bro?
But yeah, so main purpose, get a better understanding of GameMaker, build skills that might benefit people in the future, and then yeah, hopefully one day they'll join our Project Amaranth team.
That's kind of the point, yeah.
Kind of the point, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer, see if some of the other UH students are gonna join in, and then we'll start with some of the basics.
You're still talking on the live stream.
Right.
What'd you say?
We're still talking on the stream, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it up for a little bit. Say hi. How you doing? What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a video game programmer. I don't know. I'll make conversation or something. I'm gonna wait till 5:10, so that's 7 more minutes. And then I'm gonna start going over the interface and going through it. But Sibi, if you have any questions as I go along, just ask them, blurt it out. You know,
Alright.
it'll really help me because I don't 100% know if I'm conveying everything that I want to convey, and so if you ask questions, then we can fill in those gaps.
Alright.
Just waiting for some more people. Not this guy though. No, not that guy. I'm looking at you, Brandon. Donid. Dorn Vutite.
Like how you crossed out my name despite the fact that I'm right next to you and you're
Yeah.
using my computer, so really you're using my not using my account, but no, you get the fucking point.
But you're already here. And you know, I'm not necessarily here to teach you, but you know what? You're here anyways, you might as well learn some stuff. Brandon said he's not gonna be here, so that's...
What?
Said Brandon said he's not gonna be here, he just messaged me recently. And then Fabi said he wouldn't be here. So we're still maybe waiting for Donid, maybe waiting for Doran, Eternal Blue. You're here, and Toggle. Speaking of which, Toggle. Fabi's already here, Eternal Blue. Am I spelling his name wrong? Doran Vu? Donid. Yeah, I can't find them because they haven't accepted my friend's request yet. Is there anybody two watching right now.
Obviously, there's me, and then there's.
Subby, do you also have the stream open as well?
Yeah, I had the.
So you're watching from Discord and the stream?
No, I was just seeing how it was be.
So you could hear yourself maybe?
Yeah.
So then you're the other person who's watching. Okay.
Yeah, it says two watching.
Yep. So I'm one of the, or LG's one of the people watching, and I'm one of the people, or you're one of the people watching.
Yeah.
I'm here just to make sure that nothing goes wrong with the stream.
Yeah. You also here because you're my friend.
Right. Sure.
Let's see. Alright. 6 minutes, so 4 more minutes. Then we'll get started. Put one last, I guess, reminder in here. Get started. Please join chat. Please eating cereal or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Called it. So B stopped watching. What
Yeah.
am I watching now? Alright, well, it's approaching 5:10. I haven't seen anything from anybody else. So it looks like it's just gonna be me and you. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I was hoping we'd have a better percentage of shows.
Right. Well, anyway, go ahead with it then.
Yep.
It is 10 speaking started.
Yep, 5:10, good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and start going through my little tutorial explanation of the certain things. The whole tutorial series in general is mostly gonna be a fast track. A lot of other tutorial videos you'll see will probably start with stuff like a drag and drop, which I'm not gonna even go into. There's certain stuff built into GameMaker, and this is what I'm talking about, drag and drop, these little things over here. I'm not going to even go into any of this because this is basically beginner stuff. And I'm going to go full on, this is how you code, this is how you write code. Yeah. It's good, basically just fast tracking this as much as possible. So yeah, basic stuff, I'm just going to skip over it unless it's like important to being able to code. So, I mean, the first thing I want to talk about is the interface. Now, my interface is actually going to look a little different than yours, and it's because I'm using the layout for GameMaker Studio 8.0, which you can actually find in Preferences, and it's this one here. You do select skin and you just click GM8. That's personal choice. I think the default is this GM green, but I use GM8 just because that's what I'm used to. Preferences, up to you. But if you want it to look like mine, that's how you do it. So the first thing you're going to notice is this big tree over here. Every time you add something to it, you'll get a little item in the drop down and it'll be added to the list. This is what I like to call the asset tree. So anytime you make an image, a sound, just anything, it'll appear up on this list. Go ahead and delete these real quick. And anything else about your game is going to be found in this game properties section. So this is mainly stuff about how it's executed, and it's like here's the title, here's what, like when you start the game you'll have this little splash screen which you can disable, just kind of various things about it starting in full screen, but nothing that's like specifically towards your game, but just how GameMaker runs your game. That'll all be found in there, but our primary focus is going to be this asset tree here. And then, so more about the interface. So, of course, we have create a new game, open and save here. Here's your primary thing that you're going to be dealing with. This is how you run your game. So running is with the green, and if you're wanting to debug it, you do it with red. And if your game if it ever needs stopping, like if it's in an infinite loop or something else goes wrong and you can't stop the game, yeah, here's the stop everything button. And then this one's kind of an interesting button, but it's actually really important. It says it cleans the project asset compiler. So whenever you run it, for the first time it'll compile all of your code, but every time you run it afterwards, it's only going to compile stuff you changed. That makes it to where it compiles and runs a lot faster the second and third, and however many times you want to run it. It makes it so much faster. But sometimes there's little glitches you'll find if you are using really big projects. Sometimes it makes a mistake, and so you'll have something really weird happen in your game that you just can't explain. And that might be because you need to clear your project asset compiler. But that just means it'll take longer to run your next file here. Kind of a minute thing, but it can really trip some people up down the line. Okay, so the first thing I really want to talk about is rooms. It's kind of one of the basic foundations of everything in your game. A room is basically what you see. So if I run the game now, I actually have to put an object in it, so I'm going to do that real quick. But if I run the game now, it's just going to display this blank room that I just created. It always, yeah, see here it is compiling down here. Yeah, so this is the room I just created. Every time you start the game, it'll always run whichever room is on the top, which I only have one room, so that's the room that's going to run.
Yeah.
And so everything in your room is what's going to execute. So, if I have this object here, it'll be placed on this coordinate, which in our case, you can find the coordinate at the bottom here. It says x equals 32, y 32.
Okay.
Most programming languages, I don't know why, but they have 0, 0 as this top left corner. Not really sure the science or reason behind it, because it's something you could research. But it's something to note. So x is positive this way and y is positive downwards. And then here we have their size of the room in pixels. So we could say we can increase it by a lot. Just adjust the size of what you see. But this is really important here. Speed of the game. Like, this is one of the most important things here, because this is your frame rate. So the game's always going to run at 30 FPS or
Just by default.
whatever, yeah, by default, unless you change it. I usually do 60 FPS. I guess it really depends on the project you want to run. But 60 FPS seems to be a good standard for GameMaker and just games in general. You know, you're kind of optimized for it looks good to it runs efficiently. Because if you have too high of a frame rate, some computers just won't handle it. But if it's too low, it's going to look a little choppy. Anyway, so 60 FPS, good standard. But in order to place objects in the room, you would go to this Objects tab and pick the object you want. I only have one object, so I'm going to pick that one. And just place it anywhere.
Right.
Thanks for your input, LG.
Yes, I'll be here every now and then.
Anyways.
I'm sure you'll do the same whenever I'm doing an art stream.
Oh, probably. There's something interesting to note. Each room has their own creation code, which, I don't know, I've been using a lot lately, but I didn't really use it much when I first started coding. But it's a nice little thing. So it's just code that'll run right when the room is loaded. I don't know, it's good for various things. We'll probably go over that more later. And then the last thing I want to talk about with rooms is views, which is what you see in the game. By default, it's off. So if it's off, it'll just display the whole map. But if it's on, it'll only display like part of the map. So I could make the room, I don't know, really small. So now the only thing you're going to see is this little tiny square I made up here. Yeah, so this is the size of the view.
Generally not recommended to go.
Yeah. But the kind of interesting thing is, even though it's this small, it's still going to display as really big. And that's because that's because of this, which is port on screen. So this is the size of the actual image on the screen. Or on your computer. So if I match that, it should technically be really small now. Yep. Well, there you go. So now that's the size of my actual view. A kind of important thing, I guess, to note. Actually, no, I'll get to that later. There's a way to set that actual screen size that's not this. The only reason it's setting that as the screen size is because it's the first thing that tells it what the screen size should be. Usually you have a code that says, hey, make this the screen size, or the window size. But again, it's not important to learn right now. We'll go over that part later. For now, this is what your default screen size is going to be. And I'm just going to change it back so it's all nice and dandy. 1124. I'm going to make it... This is the size we used for Amaranth, but that's just personal preference. And I'm going to go ahead and make the room bigger just so you can see that it's the views are working later down. We'll do, I don't know, 12, whatever, that'll work. Yeah, so here's our view, here's the entire room. So eventually we'll have it to where we're going around the room and the camera's moving with us. But for now, we'll just leave that as is. So that's rooms. Do you have any questions regarding rooms?
No, not really.
So pretty self-explanatory, I guess.
Yeah.
So objects is the main thing that you're going to be coding. So for our case, I'm going to just say object player. Whenever you're naming things, it's typical to put a prefix to it. So for this one, I would do like room, I don't know, start or first map, I guess.
Okay.
And there's a specific reason you want to do that. If I for some reason called both of these player,
You wouldn't know like which one.
yeah, I wouldn't know which one. Like if I wanted to call the room, I wouldn't know which one to call. So by calling them something different, you're essentially making it easier to find the actual assets. When you're coding. Room first map. Alright. So this is the object. So the object is going to have different events, which the different events is what executes the different code. So there's a general order of events with object. Every time you spawn one, it'll always go through the create code first. And so any code you put in here, it'll run right when the object spawns. And as I said earlier, this is all drag and drop stuff. The only thing you're ever going to really do is hit control here and hit code. Drag that in here, good to go. So this is where we can actually start making code. Hold on. Apparently there's someone at the door. Okay, well, my friend just left. Okay. So, execution order. So again, create will be the first thing that runs, and then we go into step. Now there's a begin step, a regular step, and an end step. Obviously the order starts at begin, and then goes to step, and it goes to end step. Pretty self-explanatory, but step in GameMaker means frames. Anytime you see step, just equate it to a frame.
Okay.
So if I say the step event, that means every time my game progresses one frame, this will run. And then we have a couple other events. I guess the last one we'll talk about for now is the destroy event. Obviously, this will run when your object gets deleted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Create, go through all your frames. Once it's dead, gets deleted, run some code if you want to. Actually, there's one more important one. Draw. So there's a lot of different draw stuff. The primary ones are draw and draw GUI, but you still have your draw end and draw begin, kind of like the step event. In fact, pretty much exactly like the step event. The draw event is basically the same as the step event, but this is where you're going to have code that draws stuff. That's the only difference between draw and step. So code something like draw set color, draw text. That kind of stuff is going to go in your draw event. Alright. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, I'm just going to delete everything here. So if I run the game, you'll notice that even though I placed the player in here, you're not going to see him. And that's because I didn't assign an image to him. You can do that simply by putting a sprite. So in GameMaker, and I think, I don't want to be wrong, but I think most programming things call them sprites. I don't know. But in GameMaker, sprite means image.
Yeah.
So sprite, how about player? And then we could either load a sprite or edit it. I'm gonna just draw something real simple. I don't know. Make a little. Now, GameMaker's sprite editor isn't exactly the best, as you'll come to find out. But it's okay for the simple things, like a little blue circle, like a little, I don't know, a little smiley face. Good to go. Haha, look at my player. Oh, dang, you can't even see that. Okay. So, sprites. Sprites are very critical to games. Because it's the what you see, it's what each object looks like. Or, pretty much anything you draw other than like a background will use sprites. So you can simply set your object to be whatever sprite you just drew. So now it's got object player, sprite player as your sprite. Run the game, and I should be there somewhere. Hey, there I am. And that should be because I placed him, I placed him in the top left here. I'm gonna move him to where he's more like in the center. Yeah. There we go. So, there's a couple of important things with sprites. First of all, the origin. If you noticed when I was running the game, I had placed him on the top right.
Mm.
The coordinate for the actual object is here at 0, 0, but the sprite is displaying from 0, 0 and moving outwards here. And that's
Okay.
because I set the center to be the top left. If I change the center to be the actual center, or the origin to be the center,
Yeah.
it's going to move it. So now the center of the sprite is now where the object's located.
Uh,
Do you understand kind of what's going on there?
yeah.
So I set 32,
Do you
32.
always gotta change to like 0, 0?
Huh?
So do you always gotta change to 0, 0?
It really depends on your purpose. For my game, Project Amaranth, I have the origin always be the bottom center of the object. But again, it
Mhm.
really depends on the game you're making, what would make it easier for you. I guess for a top-down shooter, you probably would want it just to be 30, or the center, so 16, 16. And so
Mhm.
now, what'd you say?
Oh no, I just like.
So now the center of the sprite is now exactly where the object is located.
Okay.
Ooh. Okay. And then, so we're talking about sprites. Okay. So the last thing is that a sprite instance here, asset, there's actually two things. There's the actual image you see, and then there's what's called the mask. So the mask is used for collisions. So if I hit modify mask, you'll see how it's completely black here pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's actually going to collide. So if I say an ooh, hello. So if I have some kind of collision that just briefly
So if you don't know, I was going out just to help do something, and then I come back and Aaron's posting a smiley face on the screen. The most crudely drawn smiley face.
See, he's my lead artist, so he criticizes everything I draw.
Yes.
Hey, this is important.
Okay.
Anyways, so this mask basically tells GameMaker, hey, what should I collide with as far as the sprite goes? So if I do the collision right here, even though it's not touching the sprite, it'll still collide with it. So you can change, like, hey, make it an ellipse, so now it's perfectly aligned with the circle, or I can make it a diamond, or whatever. Or I can make it exactly precise, like 1 to 1. But what you set this to really just affects processing and accuracy. But anyways, you'll see this later for sure. But you can actually change which mask it uses. So if I created another sprite, I could say sprite player mask, and let's just say I made a 32 by 32, and then we made the mask an ellipse.
You missed.
Full image. It did? It sure did. Yeah, full image. So now I could use this as the player mask, even though it's a blank sprite. So you just do set a sprite and sprite player mask. Really up to you for this. Honestly, I usually make mask within the same object, or the same image that I'm making the mask for. But there's some certain circumstances where you'll have several different images, but then more masks than there is images. I don't know. Some games like think of first-person shooter games. You know, you have your one character model, but there's individual hitboxes per like arm, per leg. That's kind of what's going on here with your mask. This is what collides with it, but the image is what you see.
Right. Should you tell them why you would use a mask over just to simply like collide with the sprite?
Yeah.
I guess there are different like implications for it, like different like applications to use it per se.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases where you could have an animation with the sprite, but the animation like goes beyond your normal hitbox. So let's say I do a forward punch. You don't want somebody to collide with your
hand. And
yeah, like a bullet comes down. You don't typically want the bullet to come collide with your hand. You would just
okay.
collide with the center of your character.
Okay, so in the case
or like running into walls.
Yeah.
You don't want your fist to
prevent you from reaching the wall.
Yeah, well, you would punch into the wall and then try to move, but you can't because your fist is in the wall.
That's true. So yeah,
consistency with your mask would helps a lot.
so essentially there are cases when it's necessary to have the mask there in case you don't want things to collide with the sprite itself. Let's say the sprite starts animating, and in some cases the sprite might even like switch frames to the point where it increases size, inadvertently causing it to get stuck in a wall or something because it didn't exist in that place before. So if you're like doing a punch animation when you're right next to a wall and you don't have a mask, it'll just update you putting your hand into the wall, and now you're stuck in it.
Yeah.
Or at least temporarily.
That about sums it up. A little bit more on sprites though. I have a little example here. There's a couple of cool things about sprites. Let's say if I made some kind of animation, and I don't know, I'm gonna make another sprite here. I don't know, we'll make it, I don't know, a dot. Pretty beautiful, isn't it? But I can make it animate. So I could do, so if I have another frame, I'm just gonna keep going through the frames. Pretty simple, just like animation. And then you can just have a preview.
Okay.
So in GameMaker, your sprite can have multiple images. I guess that's what distinguishes it from images. It's the sprite could contain multiple images, contains more properties than just an image. But anyways, so let's say I wanted to draw that sprite. I could go into my draw event, and then I could just say, hey, draw a sprite. Draw that sprite. What is it? Called it sprite animation. Boom, sprite animation. And then what's kind of interesting is sub image, which is this here. Number of sub images is 5. That's the frames in your animation. So I could say, hey, pull up sub image 3, and then draw it in, I don't know, 10, 10 on the XY plane. Now here's the interesting thing you're going to note about this. Yes, it drew the sprite, but it stopped drawing the player. If you notice, because there's a player here.
Oh, okay.
But it's not drawing it anymore. And it's a weird quirk in GameMaker, I guess. I don't know why they implemented it like this, but whenever you set your sprite here, it's going to get overridden if you have a draw event. So if you want to draw the same image, it would just be draw self. But typically, when I'm like nowadays when I'm programming, I don't use this. I just use this as like an image for the asset tree, and then when placing it in the map. But then whatever I really want to draw, I put it in here. So I would do like draw sprite player, and draw the player from there. Just makes it easier in a sense, more standardized. Anyways, what else do we have to talk about? So I talked about sprites, importing sprites. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about animations. If I save this animation, you'll notice it's got an interesting file type. You see it's got strip 5. So GameMaker naturally runs these, or recognizes these file types with strip in their name. If I load in an animation, so this one's sprite player runs strips 9, it's going to automatically load each individual image in. It's really nice that way. But let's say you get an image that looks like this, which doesn't have strip in its name, but it, you can clearly see that it's an animation. You can actually import this using add from let's see, create from strip. I believe that's it. Yeah, so you can say, hey, number of images, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 8, 16, 17, 15, okay, 14 images. Images per row is 4, and they're 32 by 32 each, and it just automatically does all that for you.
Mm.
So GameMaker is kind of nice in that sense that you can import, export animations. Really good for art team.
Right. Always nice.
But yeah, you probably won't deal with it right away, but this is something you'll probably deal with down the line. Anyways, so those are the basics of objects, rooms, and sprites so far. Do you have any questions related to those? Just anything?
Not really.
So it's all good? Understanding? Awesome. This is going good.
Cool.
Alright. So, I was showing you earlier some of this coding here. A little chat box. Hold on. I'm looking at what I'm going to talk about. I kind of want to go over some of the basics of just coding in this language. First of all, as you might have noticed, double slashes is comments, whereas in Python it was the hashtag.
Okay.
So easy enough, make comments, woohoo. And then this is your bulk comments there.
Oh. God, I've been trying to figure that out forever.
Well, there you go.
And the title thing, that's also important.
Yeah, so this right here, I did a triple slash. Anytime you have the first line and you do a triple slash,
That's a section, isn't it?
no.
Oh, that's right, that's MATLAB.
Yeah,
That's
triple slash might be.
That's the name of the script.
Yes, this is the name of the script, or the just the title. So you could say creation code. It does
Okay.
stuff. So now if I hit OK, you'll see it actually renamed it here. It's really helpful just to organize.
Wait, so what is that on 7? What does that one do?
The triple
No, the slash and the star.
slash and star is a bulk comment. So anywhere between the two code. So I could type numbers here, but if I type it here,
okay,
it's
okay.
comments.
Oh, okay. I see.
Title comment. So yeah, okay. This is kind of important later when I. Well, actually, let's just go over it now. A lot of times you're gonna run scripts. We just actually went over it in our programming class, functions.
Yeah.
This basically is what that is. So I could call. I'm having trouble thinking of relevant scripts right off the top of my head. I don't know, just script do something. You know?
It does stuff.
It does stuff. Yeah. So again, just like here with the title comment, we can do another title comment. And in this case, we can write down what the parameters are. Ah man, what would do something do? I don't know. How about we multiply two numbers together?
Obviously, do stuff.
How about multiply? Did I spell multiply right? Probably not.
Yeah.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, so number 1 and number 2. Easy, easy peasy. So, what's nice about the triple comment with scripts is if I type multiply here, you'll see in the bottom here, it actually pops up exactly what I wrote here.
Oh.
So it shows that I'm on number 1 currently. Oh, jeez, the color on this is horrid. Is that even readable? I'm gonna really quickly change that because that just looks gross. I'm gonna change the color in preferences, scripts and codes. Let's see, script names. I'm gonna change that to red. How about light red since the background's kind of black. And then how about numbers? Values. Yeah, we'll do values as like a. How about that? We'll see how that looks. That looks a lot better.
Alright.
Okay. So now if we wanted to multiply that out, let's create our first script. Beautiful. So scripts aren't too bad, honestly. You have these default commands called arguments. So in this case, argument 0 would be number 1, and argument 1 would be number 2. So it basically just goes in order. So if I wanted to figure out what the multiplication is, I would return argument 1 times argument 2. The multiplication, division, all that stuff is the same as your Python class. Like exactly the same. Like it's as if they GameMaker got it from Python or something.
They learn off each other.
Yeah, none of that C++ crap. It all looks pretty. You'll also notice that I'm not using the little, what are these called, semicolons? Just like just like Python, GameMaker doesn't give a crap if you put semicolons or not.
Okay.
I just find that nice though. You can do it if you want, but who cares? It won't care.
And MATLab is really just there to hide hide it from the command window. That's about it.
Yeah.
And everything else, I'm not really sure it has any relevancy.
So anyways, of course when I run this code, it'll run it on the first frame, and then it'll return, what, 3 times 5, 15? It's not going to do anything though, because it's basically just going to equal 15 and do nothing. But if I want to display it, I would use show, or I think it's show message. Yeah. So show message is kind of similar to print in GameMaker.
Right.
Or Python, I guess. Similar to print in Python. Or basically any language. Boom, 15. Yay! And hey, look, there's my player up there. But you'll notice show message pops up in a separate menu, and it like pauses your game. So it's really only for like debugging. You typically don't do that. Typically you'll do show debug message, which means it'll show up down here in the console, the compile window. Boom, 15, right there. So I guess show debug message is probably the most equivalent to your print for for Python. Okay. One other quick thing about scripts. There's a difference between argument 0 and then putting argument 0. There's only a slight difference. But you can only use one or the other. So if you're going to use argument without the brackets here, or are they called brackets? Yeah, brackets.
Yeah, brackets.
Not squigglies. Okay. Anyways. Yeah, I guess so. So when you're creating your script, there's a certain reason you would want to use one or the other, and that's the primary reason is if you have arguments that have the option of being there. So if I create, I don't really know a good example at the moment, but sometimes you would have a function that needs additional input. If you, let's say, if the first argument is 1, I might only need one other parameter, but if it's 2, I'll need 2 other parameters. Let's say, I don't know. But you would use this argument 0 instead. It basically means the same thing. But the reason we use argument with the little brackets is because we could do if argument count is less than 2, then do this. And it won't throw an error because I have the brackets.
Okay.
But anyways, it might not make so much sense now, but it probably will later. Okay, what else do we have to talk about? Okay, so you know all about multiplication, division from our Python class. We can talk about variables and functions, I guess. I showed you earlier, like draw sprite. That's a default function that GameMaker has. But then we can also call our own scripts. Why did I do it red? I'm sorry, I'm going to change that preference one more time. Script names. Maybe orange as well. Okay. So yeah, so there you have your default functions and then your scripts. Both of which, what's really nice about GameMaker is you can click on any of these functions and it'll pop up the source code for it. It's like, here's my multiply, and then draw a sprite will pop up the help menu for it. And it'll tell you pretty much all about it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's a good way to learn. You just like, hold on, I want to draw a sprite. Okay, how do I do it? Yeah, there it is. So, pretty self-explanatory. Functions, good to go. But then you have things like X and Y. You'll notice that they're red, which means that they're a built-in variable. So every object has a certain number of built-in variables, and I bet you. Oh, where'd I go? Let me show you real quick. In the debug testing here, you can like analyze each object that you have. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So if I look at my object player, you'll see that there's a bunch of built-in variables. So every object has all of these automatically set inside the object when you create it. And that's your X and Y, direction, friction, just a bunch of different things that define what your object is. And you'll learn those in the meantime as you go. But main ones would be like your X position, your Y position, I guess image. Trying to think. Okay, speed and direction. Those are pretty good ones. These are all how your character, their positioning in their map and their velocity. So you can't name a variable X, you can't name a variable Y, you can't name it speed or direction, because these are automatically defined variables. So now if I set X is equal to 50, Y is equal to, I don't know, 100, should automatically move my character to that position. Yep, there he is. And now if I give him a speed, 5, and a direction of, I don't know, we'll just say 0 for now. That should propel him 5 pixels to the right every frame. Well, there he goes! Yeah!
Off the screen.
Off the screen! An interesting thing about direction, I don't know how much you know about directions and like applications. In GameMaker, 0 degrees is to the right. 45 would be top right, 90 is upwards. Have you had any experience with like the unit circle? Like in math classes?
Yeah, like calculus, yeah.
Yeah, calculus, yeah. So GameMaker basically uses the unit circle as its directions.
Oh.
So 90 degrees up, 180 is left.
Rads or degrees?
Well, both.
Both. Can
Both.
you specify?
You
Or which one
not
is it?
with direction. With direction, it's always degrees.
Of course.
But you could say like degrees to rad, or no, sorry, rad 2 degrees, and you could put in like pi over 2, and it should go straight up. But I mean, like, why?
Or you put 90, right?
Huh? Yeah, you could just put 90. But the funny thing is that cosine and sine, they do use radians. So if you ever want to do cosine, you would do degrees to rad, and then 180 degrees, and then that'll output what, -1 for cosine, which, well, now it doesn't make sense, but direction -1 then would be slightly down. Anyways. Good old directions. I'm gonna make this a little slower. Okay, so those are your built-in variables. So of course, just like any programming language, you can create your own variables. So I could say speed, how about h speed? no, that's a built-in variable too. I don't know, just number. Number equals 5. And then you could say, hey, speed b number. Basically your average programming language. Setting variables to each other, that kind of thing. Woo! I'm pretty sure most people who are watching this have had at least the basic understanding of how to set variables, because that's in like every programming language.
Right. I mean, who would view this video without any knowledge of coding at all?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically like Python. You have a variable, you set it equal to something. Pretty good with that. But here's the thing with GameMaker. There's 3 types of variables. The one I have here, I could go to like the step event and then say, hey, number plus equals 5 or something. And it's fine because this variable number is within the player object. If I tried to call that in a different object, it would just freak out because it's object specific. You know what I mean? Sabi? So, what?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so this number variable, it's object specific. Anytime you set a variable, it's gonna be within that object. So if I create another object, I can't call the variable number in it without first defining it. And again, it'll be defined only in this object.
Okay.
But there's ways to make it, there's ways to modify what the variable is. Just without anything is an object variable. If I say var number, this changes it to a local variable. So that means if I do number plus equals 5 in the step event, it will freak out because this number equals 5. Number is only applied to the current script.
Okay.
So that means once it's done, the number variable is gone. And then one last thing is globals. I could say global dot number. So that means no matter where I call this function in the game, I can it'll always be there. So I could go to a different object, I could go to a script, I could go into the map creation code and create it. Hey, global dot number plus equals 5 and be fine. Because it's there, it's always defined. As long as you define it first, you can always manipulate it. So globals, global vars, and then we have regular vars and local vars. All have their own unique properties. It's all good and dandy. Okay. Hey, it's almost been an hour, so let's wrap some of this up. I don't want to drag it on too long, because I know just listening for too long is just going to get mind-numbing.
Or you'll die.
Yeah. I don't think we learned this in GameMaker yet, but you know we can do regular. Yeah, let's go back to the number. Number equals 5. I mean, we obviously have done like number plus equals 5, right? Or have we done that?
Huh?
Have we done that in Python?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, there's in programming in general, there's a lot of ways you can increment a variable. Plus 5. How'd you look at this? So, if I wanted to add 1 to number, this would be like the beginner way to do it. Just number plus 1. This is the way you would do it in MATLAB.
Right.
But in most programming languages, including Python, you can do plus equals. That just means it'll do it relative to what the variable already is.
Right.
Okay.
And then in GameMaker, you can go even simpler, because why not?
Because you'll probably be doing it for a lot of things.
Yeah,
So
you
GameMaker
do
would
it
be-
a lot. So just adding plus plus to anything, that means increment by 1 upwards.
Oh, okay.
Or I could do minus minus, increment down by 1.
Oh. So what do I do? Plus 2.
Plus
Plus
2?
one.
Well, you're out of luck. You can do number plus plus twice, which I don't recommend.
Or just plus equals 2.
Plus equals 2 would be the way you want to do it.
So if it's obvious increments of 1, then just go ahead and just do just plus plus. But if it's not, plus equals is where you want to go.
Yeah. A lot of times you'll use it in stuff like this. This is a for loop. So basically it sets I to 0. And then
Yeah.
every time it's less than 10, it'll run the following code. But see, it increments by 1 each time, which is what this is for. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff you'll be using it for, or just while loops, while I is less than 10, I guess would be the easier example. I think we did whiles in, did we do whiles in Python yet?
Yeah, I was doing that.
Yeah, so this would be a simple while loop. Do stuff. So obviously this would run like 10 times before it's done. It's basic number manipulation, creating, clear, okay. Do we want to go over, I mean, because we already went, in Python we already went over whiles, we already went over ifs. So if I is less than 10, else. Here's the one difference, I guess, between your conditional statements. You'll notice I'm doing these brackets here. In Python, you use tabs instead. It's like this is how it would look in Python. Right.
Mhm.
But in GameMaker, it doesn't use tabs. It uses curly brackets. So if I put one there and I put one here, that's encompassing the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So anything in there is what's in my conditional.
Uh,
Do something else. Now, you don't have to for like one line. So if I just did if I is less than 10, if I just left it like this, it would be fine. But if I wrote another test equals 6 or something, this would run even if this is false or something, because it's only checking this first one here for being the conditional.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so you'd have to bracket the whole thing here. Anyways, and then you have your else's. So else do this. Again, GameMaker is nice. It doesn't care about your placement. You could do it like this, where it's else. You could have like a large space here. It doesn't care. As long as the order is there.
Alright.
And even with this, it doesn't care if you put the parentheses. You could just say, hey, I is less than 10. Do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. GameMaker is just really nice. Even this, like, in Python you have to do equals equals.
Yeah.
It doesn't care. 1 equals is fine. It's like the most nonchalant GameMaker language.
Coding language.
Yeah. Yeah, because normally in Python we'd be like, hey, that's supposed to be doubles equals. This is like setting I to 10, but no, this is going to return true or false now, because it's in the conditional statement. And then of course we have else if. In Python it's elif, but I don't know why they did that. In GameMaker it's else if I equals 8. I don't know. Yeah, so we got while loops, if statements. Here's one that I really like, but it can get kind of confusing if you're really new to programming in general. We have what's called a switch statement. So you could say switch I. And what it's going to do is it's going to test what value I equals. So we could do if it equals 10, or case 10, do some stuff. Or if it's case 8, do some other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what I equals. And so it's kind of a nice way to negate the need for some of your if statements here.
Yeah, it makes
Just
more like
kind of looks nicer.
yeah.
But what to really note about this is once it finds a number, it's gonna execute until you tell it to stop. So it's gonna need a break.
Oh, okay.
So if I ran 10, it would do this, and then it would also do some other stuff, and then break.
Okay.
So break is what separates them. Again, you probably won't use this right at the beginning, but it's a really nice function. Because you can just keep on adding to it, too. You know, it's just nice. But then if it's not any of those, it'll just go to your default. If I can figure out how to spell default. Default stuff. And this one doesn't need a break because it's the last one. Because it's going to default and be like, okay, it's the end of the script. So, pretty optional if you put break here. It won't matter. So anyways, those are your different things. I'll go over while loop or for loops later. What I was talking about earlier, fors. I'll definitely go over that in another stream. For now, I'll just leave it at this. And last but not least, let's actually create a small game. See some of this in action, you know. So. My plan here was just to create a simple top-down with like a little gun shoot bullet kind of thing. Yeah. Like you click and a little bullet appears. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I have a little sprite player already. I'm gonna create a sprite for the bullet. Sprite bullet.
Okay.
I don't know, probably 8x8. It's a little tiny guy. Oh yeah, it's gonna be the most beautiful bullet you've seen. Oh yeah, beautiful. Gonna round it up at the top. You know, artistic techniques. You see? Here we go. There you go, bullet. Okay, so I'm gonna center this. Let's say, just at the center. I don't know. I'm gonna just quickly draw it because I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it or not. Just how about we draw it? Draw sprite bullet. Subimage 0 x. Let's say 100 y 100. Good to go. All right, you can kind of see it. It's good enough, good visually enough. You can't really tell which direction it's facing, but hey, it's good enough. So for the player, I'm gonna first draw. I'm gonna do draw sprite, draw or sprite player, and again, player only has one subimage, so we'll just call it 0. And then we'll do X and Y. So that'll place pretty self-explanatory really. It'll draw the sprite wherever my character is located. So X and Y location. Okay. And then now let's do movement. So that would be in your step event. So there's some good functions for keyboard inputs and mouse inputs. So keyboard input is keyboard check. So we could do what? We could do arrow keys or AWSD. We could do both. How about?
Yeah.
So if keyboard check, let's do VK right. You would know this if you click keyboard check, middle click it. It'd be under keyboard input here.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a list of all the inputs.
Alright.
So, you know, they don't expect you to memorize it. So just if you ever like, hey, what's it for right? Well, there it is. Keyboard inputs.
Okay. Yeah.
There's two that are interesting, which is VK no key and VK any key. Basically, it'll return true if you're not clicking things, and if you're clicking anything, it'll return true. So press VK right. That'll return true if I'm pressing right. Another, just a side note, there's pressed as well. which means it'll only do it on the one frame where I actually push it.
Okay.
And the same with released. This will only do it on the one frame where I let go.
Alright.
But anyways, I wanted it to check every frame if I'm pressing right, and then let's just go to the right. So X plus plus. Increase my X position by 1. Easy enough. Boom. He's moving right. Second, let go, press it again, good to go. If you wanted to do, let's say D, you could add, let's say OR here. Obviously, just like in Python, it'll check either one, and if either one's true, it'll do it. But for keyboard inputs for letters, you're going to use ORD and then the letter. You're just going to have to memorize. ORD basically changes it from A to, hey, this is the key you're supposed to press, like a string or like a I don't know, just a value that keyboard check can read.
Okay.
But it'll just be pretty easy because you'll just rememorize this eventually. Keyboard check and then ORD as your letters.
Alright.
So obviously, if I press WASD, D is right. My bad. So good to go. So let's make left. Left is A. We'll do X minus minus.
Ooh.
Let's make another section for down. Oh. So let's say going down or S. So S, and as we said, Y down is plus. And going up is Y minus. So hey, we got a character that can move. Huzzah.
It checks if pressed right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a... Yeah, as I was explaining,
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
paying attention. Check pressed up or check pressed W in this case. And then I'm just modifying the positioning. And let's see. We'll call this whole script player movement. If I can spell it correctly. This one's right. This one's left. This is something I didn't learn apparently when I first started coding, but commenting is super great. Because later I'm going to be like, whoa, what's that do? I mean, obviously it goes right, but for someone who has no idea, that helps.
Essentially, model your code as if to suggest that someone's going to review it later. Someone that you don't know personally.
Yeah, I have a lot of these moments where I'm like, okay, I can create this really cool complex thing, like in the moment I think of it. I code it out and it works beautifully. I come back to it like 2 months later and I have no idea what the code does.
Right.
I just know that it works.
Sometimes it doesn't work, and then you come back to it to bug check, and then you don't
Yeah.
remember what the hell anything does.
Yeah. In this case, it probably wouldn't be necessary to comment because, I mean, obviously you can look at it and say, hey, pressing right, it moves right. So there's not really much to add by saying down because you already said down right here.
Plus, you also did title this specific script movement,
Yeah.
and there's not much going to be in this specific script, so you can probably assume that there isn't
Yeah.
going to be much in it.
Yeah. So as long as it's readable, it's fine. But if it's complex and stupid, like if I said instead of using X as my movement, I said A or something, I would have to say like, hey, A is your X position.
Right.
But it's pretty self-explanatory now, so I don't need to comment it. So let's create a bullet. Actually, I already created the object. It's right there. Delete. We'll call this one object bullet. Object bullet. This is I probably don't even need to do
You wouldn't
anything.
mind to use my explosion effect whenever.
But there's nothing to hit at the moment. I'm only gonna draw out the bullet and have it like shoot. I'm not gonna have it collide with anything yet. I'll do that in the next stream.
Then an explosion come from the center spray.
Yeah, it just randomly explodes as it fires.
Yes.
That'd be great. We'll do that later though. Anyways, we're gonna draw the bullet. So here's the thing. The bullet's gonna be heading in a direction, right? It's not just necessarily gonna be heading right. So I'm gonna create the code with that in mind. So let's see, draw the bullet. So we talked about draw sprite. There's actually another function that allows you to do more sprites, and that's draw sprite extent. So we would do sprite bullet, just like normal. It's the same subimage of 0 because it's the only image. And then let's see, X position, X and Y. Now here's the added features. So you got X scale, which obviously will stretch it horizontally. So 1 is normal, 2 would be twice the width, so on and so on. We're not going to stretch it because we don't need to. But here's the important part, rotation. So this object is going to have a speed and a direction. And so I want to rotate the sprite based on that direction. And what's nice is I can just put in direction, you're good to go. Because that's direction is 0, and my sprite is facing right, and direction of 0 is right. So if I just put it in there, you're good to go.
Alright.
Which is honestly why I tell people to draw your sprite with facing right in mind. Actually, let me make this like bigger.
And if it's not facing right, you can just flip it.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. I'm just gonna make a slightly better sprite. Putting more pixels into this. Oh god. Just a little bit more pixels so you can kind of. Okay. Well, there's the front of it.
God, that's gross.
Okay. Well, there's the front of the bullet.
I see we have a house.
Yeah, I'm just drawing it so you can see where the front of it is. Center is like right there in the center. Anyways, color, let's not deal with it. If you put in -1, that just means default color. Then alpha. Okay, I guess I gotta explain alpha a little bit. Alpha is the same thing as transparency.
Yes.
Thanks for your input, LG.
1 means opaque, 0 means completely transparent, see-through.
Yeah, so it's a gradient from 0 to 1. 0.5 means you're gonna half see it.
If you imagine it like percentages, then it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, there you go. So I want it to be visible, so I'm gonna say 1.
Yeah, so 1 equals 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, bullets. So we're good to go with bullets. Good to go. I'm okay with it. Okay. So now we want to say, hey, fire that bullet. Fire the bullet. So we're going to do it on mouse clicks. So there's another function for mouses. Mouse check button. Mouse check button is your mouse functions. And again, it has pressed and released just like, oh god, I can't spell. You know what I mean, though. Oh, there it is. Boom, button press and release. Just like the other one. And so actually we want pressed for this. Oh, what'd I do? We want pressed for this one. Because we don't want it to be like you hold the mouse button and it just like berets bullets everywhere. So if you do it right when it clicks, you're gonna have to let go and then click again for this to work. So mouse button left is your default code there. And again, you would do middle click and then mouse input. And hey, mouse left, mouse right, middle, none, any. So same stuff as the keyboard clicks, just less of them. So left click, and we're gonna do this code, which is instance create. Create creates other objects.
Oh.
Beautiful code.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they call it instance when they're objects, but whatever.
It means that it doesn't have to necessarily apply to objects, maybe?
No, whenever you say instance create, you're always creating objects.
That is a synonym that they created because they wanted to sound smart.
Whatever. It's 3 basic functions here, or parameters, x, y, and what object you're creating. So if I'm creating a bullet from the player, I'm going to do x and y, because that's the player's x and y, because I'm in the player object.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, hey, it's object bullet. Create it. So the interesting thing about this is it's going to return that object that I just created. So I'm going to say object equals this. And so here's the really cool part about what I'm about to do. I could say object.speed and object.direction. So what this means is it's going to take the speed variable and the direction variable from this object that I just defined and modify that instead of the variables that are in this object.
Okay.
So variable direction. So we're going to want to point it at the mouse, obviously. There's a number of ways we can do this. And we could just do it when you create. Okay, let me just show you the easy way first. So if I create the bullet in the so in object bullet, if I middle click that, it'll pop up the bullet. When I create it, I can just have it like the direction equal where the mouse is. So I could say set direction. Direction equals, and then there's a function called point direction, or spelled it wrong.
Point direction.
Point direction.
What does it mean?
Gosh, what does it mean? That's a good question. It basically means you put in 2 points and it'll give you the direction of it. So X and Y for the bullet wherever it spawns, and then mouse X, mouse Y. Pretty easy. Wherever the bullet starts and wherever the mouse is, what's the direction? That's what the facing direction will be. So if I run that now, I should be creating bullets that are just sitting still but looking at my mouse. Here I am. Hey, there's a bullet. Boom. So they're looking at my mouse whenever I create them. Beautiful. Grade A content right here.
Yes, a smiling happy face is essentially excrementing sideways houses pointing at the cursor.
Do you have to use that word?
Would you rather me use the more derogatory term?
Excrementing?
I could use a much more derogatory term.
That's fine. And then you could just say speed equals 5 or something. Easy peasy stuff. Okay, there you go. So hey, look at them go.
Oh, snap.
Oh crap, look at it go. But let's just say for some reason you didn't want this to be in your create event. I was trying to show you that you could do it here in the when you actually create it.
Mm-hmm.
So object equals that, and then object dot direction, and then object dot speed, and there you go. Works exactly the same, except point direction. In most cases, it happens to work fine for this one because the spot where it spawns and the player location is exactly the same. This X and Y is for the player now instead of the bullet. But if I wanted the bullet, it would be object X and object Y. But I mean, it's really irrelevant for the current situation because when it's the first time they spawn, it's the same spot anyways.
Correct.
And hey, we created our first top-down shoot 'em up. I don't know. One thing I guess is important here is that, well, let's just say I create thousands of bullets. In fact, let me do that for demonstration. If I just say, hey, when I hold down the left button, it creates a bunch of bullets. This is gonna look cool, by the way.
Oh, snap.
So, what?
You're just holding down the button?
Yeah, I'm holding down left click. So eventually, if I do this for a long time, it's gonna lag the game. Because even though they go off the screen, it's still tracking their X and Y positions for each individual bullet.
See, there it goes, starts lagging.
Yeah, I saw that little lag spike there.
And this is because it's not being destroyed off screen, which you can set.
Which is what I'm about to do.
Yes.
So the easiest way I would do it is to say, hey, event, and there's one called outside the room, and destroy stuff.
Now keep in mind, this doesn't necessarily destroy them outside of the viewing screen. It destroys them outside of the room.
Yeah.
So if where the player is like very small, like camera view, the objects will still exist. they'll just be really far outside the room. They'll just be really far outside your viewing area until it hits the edge of the room.
Yeah. So this outside room, it basically is. Oh god. Basically is this. It's gonna check. Hey, am I outside what the creator set the room to be? Yes.
Yeah.
Delete self. Okay. And to delete an object, it's instance destroy. I don't know why they coded it like this, but you can only call this inside the object you want to destroy. So if I wanted to say, hey, destroy the player, I couldn't just say, hey, object player. It wouldn't work.
What's the point of the parentheses then?
Parentheses, anytime it's a function, there's always parentheses, even if there's no parameters.
Oh, okay.
It's just a rule in coding in general.
Couldn't it just automatically do that for ones that don't have parameters?
You know, you would think so, but that's coding for you. But anyway, so instance destroy. So once once it hits the edge of the room, it'll destroy. I can actually demonstrate this real quick. If I set the view to be...
Or you could just finish. Oh no! You look at play it again.
Oh.
You can easily see it being destroyed the instant that it touches the edge.
Oh, can you?
Yes.
Oh yeah, you can kind of see them kind of like disappearing.
It's almost as if it's touching it and then just like, kind of stopping.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you can see the edge of the bullet.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, I was gonna show you can do, just as an example. I don't know. I'm gonna modify where the view is. View x view. Oops. Cool. I'm gonna move the view outside of the room, which you can do. My GameMaker doesn't care. Okay. So yeah. So the edge of the actual room is right there. I just set it to where I'm looking past the edge of the room. I don't know why, but GameMaker just lets you look past the edge of the room, which is why in the map editor that I have, even though you can see the edge of the room, you can like scroll way past it and place objects outside of it.
Right.
So the room is more of an arbitrary thing. It just helps with coding, with this kind of stuff. And I'm gonna call that a day.
Sounds about right.
Do you have any questions? I would like to go through questions if you have any.
I mean, that's not any right now.
What about for just like any of the code that I went over?
I mean, it's probably more like I have to use the software too to like ask more questions.
Right.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah, like so I can get used to it and stuff.
Yeah, you seem like you've took it in very easily. Like you seem like you understand it.
Writing down notes and stuff.
Oh, you've been writing notes. Mission
Yeah.
accomplished. I'm teaching people.
All right.
Okay, well, I hope the other people that were supposed to be here look at this later, and I'm talking to you guys right now if you're watching.
Thank you for attending our lecture.
Here's what you say, right?
The midterm is this is next Saturday. Make sure you study it ahead of time. Also, make sure you pay your tuition.
Yeah, homework's due on Wednesdays.
Also, pay your tuition. I make money off of that.
Well, I think this went pretty well. I will say.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Save your project. Good to go. It saves every time you run it anyways.
And I'll have that on my desktop forever.
Well, I'll delete it. But hey, one extra little thing. I showed you earlier that you can run the game with debug. So yeah, if you'll notice, I still have the game open, but I have this other window here. Oop. So you can press this button and that'll update it every frame. So let's see. So if I start creating a bunch of bullets, hey, you can see all these bullets down here. I'm gonna wait for them to hit the edge of the screen and destroy themselves. Boom, they're gone. But it's just really nice to test for, like, here's the object bullets that I'm creating.
Yeah.
Oh, hey. Here's a good way to test for unnecessary stuff. I don't need this object being stored. Because, hey, what's the point beyond setting the initial create of it? So I'm gonna actually make it a var. Boom. For some reason, vars, you do need this colon. Sometimes.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, like, if I leave it without, it's saying there's an error. But like if I did var test equals 5, hey, it doesn't care. You see, it doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
But I guess it's only if you have a function there. I don't know why. It's just really random. But you could also call the var and then say, hey, test equals 5. It doesn't matter. But whatever. So now if you notice, I run the game, it's not going to keep track of this object variable anymore. Where is it? Run, okay. Great. Oh shoot. I'm all over the place right now. So now that object doesn't exist anymore.
Hmm.
Or the variable object. I'm like trying to like snap this to the side of my screen, but it's not working. Oh, yeah, you'll notice I can't resize it at all. This is something we'll talk about later. That's all in your game properties here. But anyways, you can see the XY position. I'm modifying. Just this whole menu in general is just great for testing. I guess I'll just go over one last thing. You can do right click and toggle breakpoint. We haven't gone over this in Python, but you can also do that in Python. I've never done it in Python, so I can't really say, hey, it's going to be the same. But if you toggle your breakpoint, but then also run in debug, it'll stop every time it runs across that point. So I can say, if I shoot a bullet, boom, it stopped right there. So I can actually look at the bullet, and you can see where's direction. It hasn't set it yet. So if I go forward one line, boom, set the direction.
Hmm.
And then if I go what in the world? Oh, it's my mouse angle is probably just some weird number. Yeah, go over one extra frame, set my speed, wherever it went. Speed 5. So this is kind of a nice way because you can go through your code line by line. Skipped over all these because I never clicked a direction. Yada yada. Anyways, there it goes. Just a great way to test your code. But if I still had that here and I just run it normally, it won't care. It ignores your breakpoints. It only does the breakpoints if you hit the debug mode. And last but not least, again, click this, just closes your game. It's important for your while loops. If you get infinite loops, you won't be able to close your game unless you click that. Anyways, that's everything I wanted to go over. Actually, we went way longer than I thought we would. Hour and 30 minutes. Hey, that's like a full length of an actual like course at UH or a college.
Of course. But,
so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Especially since we started at 5:10, so that's actually an hour and 20 minutes. So that's like your average length course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds all right. Okay, so that's it.
That's it. Thanks everyone who watches in the future, and thanks Sabi for actually joining us for the in-person calls.
Unlike the rest of them.
Yeah, gosh.
Calling you out. I don't remember your names.
Yeah, well, Brandon said he had to go, but yeah, darn it. Whatever your other names are. you 3, 4. I'm watching you.
Oh hey.
Oh hey.
Dorn.
Oh sorry, I missed the stream. I was studying calc. More important than GameMaker, I see. Pretty much all night. It crashed hard early this morning.
Ah.
Do you have an archive of the stream up anywhere? Yes. It will be up right now.
Make sure you watch till the end.
Make sure watch till the end.
Till, not tell.
Look at me spelling. Till the end, so you can see me typing to you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah. Oh shoot.
No. Oh, yeah, it ended up right as you.
Oh no!